Could you survive a day in ancient Rome? Spoiler, you probably can't. Most people assume they'd survive a day in ancient Rome without too much trouble, but would you really? Truth is, not even close. The moment you wake up, everything feels off, like you're in another world. The next 24 hours? Pure chaos. If you think you'd make it out unscathed, brace yourself. This day is going to wreck you. Dawn breaks, but instead of birdsong, the city explodes into an overwhelming cacophony. Before you even open your eyes, the sounds flood in, vendors shouting their wares, animals braying. It's wild. And the unmistakable splash of chamber pots emptied from second-story windows. That's your new alarm clock, human waste splashing down on the street below. Charming, right? As you try to shake off sleep, the soundtrack continues. Babies crying, dogs barking, carts rattling on uneven stone streets. Chaos everywhere. And neighbors arguing so loudly they wake the entire block. Welcome to Rome, your humble home? A cramped apartment called an insula. A stacked wooden building squeezed with multiple families, each fighting for space. Higher floors cost less rent but come with a real risk: collapse or fire. Yikes! Think of it as the ancient world's version of affordable housing, with a lethal twist. These buildings creak and sway ominously at night. It's nerve-wracking. Previous tenants often left behind mysterious stains, horrible smells, and, on occasion, even human remains that nobody bothered to remove. Gross. Your bed? A wooden plank topped with a thin sack stuffed with straw. Crawling with bugs, naturally. Privacy? Forget it. Sharing your tiny room with strangers who snore inches from your face means your bedroom's about as private as a crowded subway car during rush hour. Cleaning up? Romans didn't have showers. Instead, they rubbed olive oil all over their skin and scraped it off with a curved metal tool called a strigil. Imagine the world's first exfoliation, except it barely cleans you and leaves you smelling like a salad dressing. The oil was supposed to lift dirt off, but mostly it just spread the grime around in creative new patterns. Public toilets? They were essentially communal affairs, with seats lined side by side. No partitions and everyone sharing a single sponge on a stick for cleaning. Bathroom small talk? Politics, weather, or digestive troubles, all discussed while you're doing your business next to strangers. Talk about awkward. Fresh water came from public fountains. You had to fetch it daily because most homes lacked running water. Navigating the streets was an obstacle course through piles of animal droppings, rotting food, and garbage thrown wherever convenient. Imagine hopscotching through a minefield of filth just to get to the fountain. Your wardrobe? One or two tunics worn day in and day out, rarely washed. Laundry day happened as rarely as a solar eclipse. Every morning routine felt like a logistical challenge, requiring planning and a strong stomach. By the time your morning rituals wrap up, your empty stomach demands attention. Roman breakfast was brutal. Stale bread, questionable olives, hard cheese, or porridge as thick as cement. No variety. The bread often came with surprise protein, weevils and bugs baked right in. Romans pretended that crunch was a feature, not a bug. The marketplace opened before sunrise, erupting into chaos. Vendors shouted, animals left their marks everywhere, and determining fresh food from spoiled was a vital skill. If it didn't smell completely rotten, it was probably safe to eat. Flies swarmed everything. Rats scurried through vendor stalls, treating the market like their personal banquet hall. Meat was expensive, affordable only to the wealthy. Fish, usually smothered in garum, a fermented fish intestine sauce smelling worse than you can imagine, was more common. This pungent condiment was doused on nearly every meal, making dining a true test for your nose. Food storage was a gamble against insects and heat. Clay pots were about as reliable as umbrellas in a hurricane. Finding bugs in your flour? Not a complaint, but proof you had protein. Cooking was over open flames, turning every meal into a potential disaster. Water safety was a daily guessing game, so Romans diluted their water with wine. Everyone drank alcohol all day, including children. Ancient Rome was one giant happy hour, apparently. Salt was so valuable soldiers were paid in it, hence the word salary. Salt was worth its weight in silver, making every bite a risky digestive game thanks to unwashed hands and questionable hygiene. With breakfast down, it was time to earn your next meal. Roman workdays started at sunrise and ended at sunset, meaning 14-hour days under a merciless sun. Workers faced intense heat with no protection, building empires on backs that never heard of workers' rights. Construction work involved hauling massive stones up shaky wooden scaffolds held together by rope and hope. Safety gear? None. Falls and crushing injuries were common. Safety meetings would last 30 seconds. Try not to die. Questions? Good. Let's build. Market workers battled noise from shouting vendors, barking animals, and swirling dust. Working there was like trying to have conversations inside a tornado of rotting vegetables. Your voice turned hoarse by midday. Farmers labored bent over all day with crude tools, backs aching and hands cracked, working barefoot through fields filled with animal waste and sharp debris. Farming was harder than any gym workout you can imagine. Craftsmen worked in poorly ventilated shops filled with dust, fumes, or animal odors. Blacksmiths toiled by blazing forges, potters inhaled clay dust, and leather workers endured death-smelling chemicals. Pay barely covered food and shelter. Life was constant pain with a short timeline. After grueling labor, Rome offered brutal entertainment. Gladiator games filled massive amphitheaters with tens of thousands screaming for blood. These were ancient reality TV, except here the stakes were life and death. Morning events featured hunts where exotic animals were slaughtered, driving many species to extinction. Lions, elephants, and tigers, most Romans never saw them alive, only in death. Between hunts came public executions. Crowds packed amphitheaters, munching olives while criminals burned, were crucified, or torn apart by wild beasts. Family outings for some were literally watching others die. Gladiator fights matched mismatched opponents. Fair fights were boring. Sword against net, heavily armored versus nearly naked. The crowd voted with thumbs up or down. The emperor made the final call, but usually followed popular opinion to avoid riots. The arena was a sensory overload. Sweat, blood, animal waste, and food smells mingled into a toxic stew. Politicians used games to win favor because nothing says "vote for me" like free, brutal entertainment. Surviving illness in Rome was its own nightmare. Medicine was based on the theory of four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, believed to control health. Doctors mostly guessed. Bloodletting was common, cutting veins to balance humors, which often left patients weaker or dead. Treatments included leeches, cupping, and purging, all aimed at emptying the body. Pain relief was herbal Russian roulette. Dental care was tooth pulling with no anesthesia, often requiring multiple people to hold patients down. Medical hygiene was non-existent. Dirty hands and unsterilized tools spread infection. Most died before 40. When night fell, Rome became more dangerous. Oil lamps provided dim light, leaving streets mostly in darkness. Navigating was hazardous. Open sewers, uneven stones, and criminal gangs lurking. Crime skyrocketed after dark. Muggers and thieves hunted anyone carrying valuables. Fire was a constant threat. Wooden buildings and open flames meant entire neighborhoods could burn down on accident. Night watchmen existed but were unreliable. Taverns overflowed with drunken brawls and off-key singing. Roman nightlife made modern college towns look tame. Homes offered little protection. Doors unlocked, windows without glass, and thin walls. Rats the size of small cats spread disease, while street gangs extorted residents. Emergency services? Non-existent for most. Your best hope was to survive until dawn. So, could you survive a day in ancient Rome? Maybe, if you're incredibly lucky. But the sights, sounds, smells, and dangers would break most people long before sunset.